You want to make some picks on your favorite sports? Check out Underdog's Fantasy Pick'em game, where you can pick higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players and can win up to 325 times your entry by using code Niners when you sign up. And you'll get $1,000 bonus cash and a free pick.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about the guard position. And so there's going to be free agent guards available that the 49ers could target. And I think that's something that they probably need to at least take a look at. And it doesn't mean that they address it in free agency. They could also address it in the draft. We've seen them strike gold last season with Dominic Pooney, and they've always hit on players in the draft. If you just look at recent history, a guy like Aaron Banks was very serviceable at left guard. I think the 49ers want to improve the position, and now they have a need at left guard because Aaron Banks is going to be out on the open market. And we've seen the 49ers go through this before. Laken Tomlinson hit the open market. They had put a number out there. They realized that it was just going to be too expensive to retain his services, and they moved on. And they had a player in waiting. Now, I think the 49ers fully planned on having a player in waiting now, but I think it's a little less sure that they do, because Spencer Burford was supposed to be a guy that was able to be a starting guard in this league for a long time. He looked really good his rookie season, but since then, he's somewhat fell off. And last season, he really didn't play a whole lot of football. So with question marks around him, with question marks around Nick Zakel, Ben Barch is a free agent. What do you do at left guard? I think it does open the door for the possibility of the 49ers evaluating free agent guards to step in. Because we're not just talking about depth, but we're talking about an overall starter and what they could do for your football team. And so addressing this is going to be key. Now, the 49ers could look at another area to address in free agency, and then that could potentially open up other players to play guard. Like, for instance, if the 49ers decide to move on from the center Jake Brendel, and I did a video about free agent centers, and there's some really good ones that if the 49ers strike gold with the centers, Jake Brendel could be moved on from, and then you're not going to be able to afford to pay a left guard as well as a starting caliber center, somebody like a Drew Dahlman. So the 49ers do have to pick which positions to target. But let's say that maybe Drew Dahlman is too expensive. The 49ers could evaluate left guard and say, you know what? We've got Dominic Pooney. He's going to be set at right guard for a long time. We like Spencer Burford. We like Nick Zakel. We like Ben Barch. But we want to get a surefire starter, somebody that's a real stud at guard. We're going to pay a little bit extra. They could completely do it. And there are going to be some names out on the open market that are pretty darn good football players when it comes to guard. And then you look at the draft, and there's some pretty good players available in the draft. So 49ers can definitely address guard in one way or the other. So we're going to go through the free agent prospects, but I also want to go through the prospects that the 49ers have within the organization, talk about how they played last year, and whether they are a realistic option as we work towards which free agents fit for the 49ers. And that's all we're going to talk about, free agent fits. And if they're too expensive, I'll bring them up. We'll talk about them, and then we'll probably move on. Now, 49ers could always overspend and prove us wrong that they're willing to spend on the interior offensive line. I just don't expect it for any position that's not named center. So some of these guys might be priced out, but we'll talk about that as well. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Lots of new subscriptions, so thank you so much. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball to NHL and UFC. Bet Online is your number one sports betting source for the new year. Every touchdown to three-pointer and hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. So let's start with the player that has been the incumbent over the last few years. And it's interesting because I remember when the 49ers drafted Aaron Banks, I was a little surprised. He didn't exactly fit the scheme per se. He was a lot bigger than the normal targets the 49ers go for. But if he could figure it out, if he had enough lateral quickness, well, wow, they could really get something out of it. So we went to the first training camp, and I was there watching him practice. And Maurice Hurst was on the 49ers team at the time. And because Aaron Banks was a second-team offensive lineman, he was going against Maurice Hurst. And Maurice Hurst was absolutely destroying him. He was just too quick. Aaron Banks couldn't move fast enough. And that's how the season got started for Banks. And it really never got on track as a rookie. But after that, Aaron Banks became a pretty consistent starter for the San Francisco 49ers at left guard. Enough so that I feel like a couple years ago, he really came into his own. And there were talks that, hey, we might not be able to move on from Aaron Banks. We might have to bring him back. This Laken Tomlinson form of letting these guys hit the open market and not bringing them back might be over. But then Banks started suffering some injuries. And I think those injuries have really hindered him and prevented him from becoming the player that I think the 49ers were really hoping he could. Now, his PFF rankings for 2024, he was a 65.4 overall grade. That's 50th best out of the 135 qualified guards for this exact mark. So 50th best, there's two guards, 32 teams. He's in the bottom third when it comes to starting guards in the NFL. That's not great. You look at the pass blocking grade. He was 77th out of 135 with a 60.5 grade. And his run blocking grade was a 68.9, which is 37th. Definitely a lot better considering how many the 64 starting guards there are in the entire NFL. So he was a lot better, closer to half when it came to run blocking, which we know the 49ers really take into account. So you've got a situation where Aaron Banks is going to hit the open market. He hasn't played up to the level that he probably believes he should play or the 49ers were hoping to get from him. His run blocking grade is still pretty good, but it's a guy that's starting to deal with injuries. He's going to hit an open market where Spotrac believes he's going to make about $8.5 million on the open market. And I think for the caliber of player you're getting, that might be a little bit rich for the 49ers. And the reason is the 49ers have other options at guard. And Aaron Banks is a good player. But I think the 49ers know they need to upgrade their offensive line in some key areas. Now, they're not going to break the bank to do it. Maybe one free agent, whether that's a high-priced guy or medium high-priced guy at center or guard. And so I don't think they could potentially bring Banks back. I think they're going to make another decision. So one of the guys that could be available is John Feliciano. And John Feliciano, I was told, someone actually hit me up in the comment sections that said that, David Lombardi spoke to Feliciano, and Feliciano said he was now thinking about a return because of the way his season went and the way that he was not able to perform this year. So that makes John Feliciano a possibility. I definitely like John Feliciano. I think that he played guard really well for the 49ers in 2023, and I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back to compete for the starting left guard role because I think he did a really good job, and he was the number one ranked guard in 2023 when he took over for Spencer Burford at right guard. So that just proves how good he can be. Now, it was a lot better ranking in 2023 than he had in 2022 where he played center for the New York Giants. So I think Feliciano could be a cheaper option and a one-year stopgap potential for the 49ers to go with if they don't want to spend. But if they have the opportunity to hit on a guard that they could sign for the next 3 to 5 years, they might want to do it. They might want some stability next to Trent Williams over the next few years with Brock Purdy going to be a high-priced quarterback. So Feliciano is definitely somebody they can consider. I think everyone is kind of on board with a young player that played really good for the 49ers this year, and that is Ben Barch. And we didn't get to see a lot of Barch, unfortunately. He suffered the ankle injury, just a freak accident that really took away what our hope was going to be of seeing him play down the stretch in 2024 and really earning an opportunity to be a starter. But in that opportunity that he got to play, I think he did a good job. And this is not going to be somebody that breaks the bank. He's going to be a lot cheaper. He just doesn't have, the amount of snaps that people want to see. He doesn't have the track record to prove that he can consistently play in and play out the way he did for the 49ers in 2024. But what he does have is Chris Foerster, knowing who he is and having belief and faith in him and seeing him every day in practice. And that's Ben Barch. And I think a lot of people are coming along and coming on board that Ben Barch could be a starting NFL interior offensive lineman. And I think the 49ers are willing to give him a shot. I do expect the 49ers to bring back Ben Barch, whether that is to be the outright starter at left guard or to come in and compete, whether that is with Spencer Burford, with John Feliciano, or if that is with somebody else that we're going to talk about, or even a draft pick or a free agent, depending on what they decide to do. I think if the right free agent was available for the right amount of money, the 49ers would be willing to strike. But let's talk about Ben Barch a little bit. His overall grade was a 74.8, which was 23rd best amongst guards. Remember that. That's a good number. His pass blocking grade, a 74, which was 23rd best. And his run blocking grade was a 71.2, which was 29th best. All of those numbers better than Aaron Banks. So that just goes to show you that he was in the... Now, Aaron Banks played a lot more snaps than Ben Barch, but in those snaps, Barch was the better player. Now, he's only 26 years old. He's 6'6", he's 315. He's got a good anchor, a former offensive tackle. I think that Ben Barch might have something that the 49ers really like. That's why they kept holding on to him and not wanting to let him go. So I think Ben Barch could potentially be the 49ers left guard in 2025 football season. So remember that as we're going through these free agent guards, that it might just be Ben Barch who's the free agent that the 49ers bring in. But I think everyone would love competition. I think everyone might even like a bigger name. But, with those numbers, it was a pretty good showing for Ben Barch. And if Chris Foerster believes he can keep it up, then the 49ers might be able to skimp again at left guard. The other player who played left guard for the 49ers once Banks was hurt was Nick Zakel. Zakel, just 25 years old, but the exact same size as Ben Barch, 6'6", 315 pounds, and he did a really good job when it came to pass blocking. Nick Zakel was better than Ben Barch when it came to pass blocking. 77.7 pass blocking grade. That's ninth best amongst guards in the NFL. Really good. Now, his overall grade definitely hurt. 58.77, which was 80th, and his run blocking grade 51.2. So what you get as far as a pass blocking player, Nick Zakel, you lose when it comes to the run blocking. He was one of the worst run blocking guards in his time that he played. So if he could get better during the offseason at run blocking, and then he could be in the mix for this role. I have believed since training camp that Ben Barch is the better guard of the two, and that Nick Zakel is the better center of the two, even though they are almost mirror images as far as height, weight, and movement skills. I think that Nick Zakel will be in the mix. I think he could compete for a job there, but I think he just might be outright competing for the center job if the 49ers don't spin there, which I hope they do. So a couple of in-house options so far. We got the free agents in Feliciano and Barch. Those two guys could definitely come back in place of Banks, and I think everyone would feel comfortable. But also Nick Zakel going into the last year of his deal, so potentially he could be one of those guys as well. So that would make a lot of sense if the 49ers started to think about Zakel and what he could be for the future of the San Francisco 49ers, whether that's at center or at guard. Because I think it's important for the 49ers to find the guy that can fit in there. And, with one good season, potentially one of those guys could figure it out. Now, of course, another guy that the 49ers were very high on is Spencer Burford. But Spencer Burford did not have a good season for the 49ers. Now, some of it, we got to remember, he played some tackle as well. But this is a guy who was a starting right guard for the 49ers when they went to the Super Bowl. And he had a 57.6 grade this season, which is 88th best. He had a 64 in the run blocking grade in 2024. That's 57th best. And run blocking grade, which he should have been phenomenal at because that's where he makes his bacon. He was only 53% grade on that, which is 114th best. It was not a good season for Spencer Burford at all. And I feel like since the mishap that he had in the Super Bowl, he's never been able to come back to his original form. He was better as a rookie, and he's a very talented guy. Chris Verster's talked about the fact he's probably the most talented of the offensive linemen on the interior, yet he just can't be consistent, and I think that is proven by the numbers that we've been looking at. It's just not proven there. Now, one more guy I want to talk about, and we'll see what happens. He's a free agent, 49ers free agent, and Chris Verster's talked about the fact he hasn't had an opportunity to get a chance at left guard. And I wonder if the 49ers would give him a shot. Maybe the 49ers address tackle in the draft, and they say, you know what, let's bring him back, but let's bring him back as a guard. And that is Jaylen Moore. And the reason being, listen to this. This is out at tackle where it's a lot more difficult to pass block. Jaylen Moore was a 74.9 grade, which was 25th best in the NFL. He had a 73 pass blocking grade, 42nd best in the NFL, and a run blocking grade of 70.1. I think if you put him in at interior offensive line, those are probably some really, really strong marks for the San Francisco 49ers. So Jaylen Moore, if the 49ers, especially if they draft one of the offensive tackles in the first 2 rounds, that player could end up playing swing tackle, and maybe Jaylen Moore competes for interior offensive line at left guard. It could be something to look at. He's still just 27 years old, 6'4", 311, and he can move. So a name to watch. But let's get into these free agents that are going to come in potentially. Now, the number one guy that is probably on everyone's mind is Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs. I fully expect him to get a monster payday. He is going to be one of the best. He had a 78.8 overall PFF grade, which is absolutely phenomenal. His pass blocking grade is a 70.6. His run blocking grade is where he's really phenomenal. An 80.8, which was 10th best in the league. I expect him to get a really big contract. Maybe he gets something around $20 million, which would be absolutely crazy. So I wanted to bring him up. I wanted to mention him. And I wanted to say I don't see the 49ers signing an interior offensive lineman like him in this draft, in this free agency period, because I just think he's going to get way too much money on the open market. That is for sure. Another guy that's going to get a lot of money on the open market is going to be Kevin Zeitler. So Kevin Zeitler, of course, was with the Baltimore Ravens for a long time, and he has been absolutely fantastic in his time in Detroit. He had an 86.8 PFF grade this season, which is his best since 2014. So he's 34 years old, so that might change some things. But how about this? He had an 87.2 run blocking grade, which is a career high for Kevin Zeitler. So you talk about an 86.8 overall grade, that is 5th best. He had a 71.8 pass blocking grade, that's the 32nd best, and his run blocking grade of 87.2 was 3rd best amongst guards. This is the type of player at 6'4", 340 pounds, that's an absolute mover. He moves people off their fits. Now, he's a tough fit, once again, for the 49ers scheme. So the question mark would have to be, and we've seen the 49ers do this with Aaron Banks, with John Feliciano, is can this guy fit our scheme? And so that's going to be a big question mark on whether Kevin Zeitler could be somebody the 49ers go with. So that's something, but I thought I would mention him because with the age being 34 years old, it's not expected that he'll get top of the line money. We know Detroit pays a lot of players, and he played so well this year that if you could get a year or two out of Kevin Zeitler and you felt, if you're Chris Verster, that you could use him in the 49ers system, he would be an absolute gangbusters pickup because he has been just fantastic this season. I mean, just fifth best amongst guards, and that run blocking grade is what's going to get everyone's attention for the San Francisco 49ers because that is really, really good. And you're talking about, we talked a little bit about Trey Smith, and he's going to get big money because of what his age is. With Zeitler played better this year than Trey Smith, but he's 34 years old. And so that comes into account when people are determining how much they are going to pay a player. They might not want to go down that road of paying a veteran player at that age, 2, 3, 4 years down the road because of, the potential of injury and the potential that his play is just going to start falling off. But what an opportunity you could have if you could get a guy like that to come in. But we'll see because, I'm sure he really loves playing in Detroit. He had such a good season. Maybe he wants to duplicate it there, and they have a really good football team. Now, let's talk about a guy that PFF has actually said that the 49ers are most likely to sign. And so this is what kind of got it on my radar for Tevin Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins has been playing for the Chicago Bears, and PFF kind of linked them together and said the 49ers are this would be make the most sense for the 49ers if they sign Tevin Jenkins. But Jenkins is going to make pretty good amount of money. So let's kind of talk about who Tevin Jenkins is before we break down what we think that the money could look like. He had a 75.4 overall grade, which is respectable. It's 18th best amongst offensive guards. He's 6'6", 321 pounds at 26 years old. So very similar height and weight measurables to Ben Barch and also to Nick Zakel. Both all 6'6", both of them about 315, 316, with Tevin Jenkins having a little bit extra size. Pass blocking grade 75.8 makes him 15th best pass blocking grade, and his run blocking grade of 74.3 is 20th. The reason that it makes a lot of sense for the 49ers if they're going to pay a guard to go with a guy like Tevin Jenkins, number one, he'll fit the system. Athleticism, everything. He can move. He's got the length. He's got everything that you need for your system. But number two, consistency. That's one of the things, right? We're talking about Nick Zakel, really good pass blocker, like one of the best, top 10 in the league pass blocking from guard, and then run blocking abysmal, like one of the worst. And so there's no consistency there. Same thing with Spencer Burford. There's no consistency with his play. Well, Jenkins, everything's in the 70s. So yes, it's not Kevin Zeitler. Yes, it's not Trey Smith, but this is pretty darn good. But what's his money going to look like? I think is a big question mark, because I don't know if the 49ers are going to be willing to pay a center multi-year deal worth well over, $15 million a year. So I think that this could be something interesting. He's a former second-round pick. Sam Cosmi signed a 4-year, $74 million deal with the Washington Commanders before last season. So that could be what you're looking at. Jenkins, a former tackle, kicked in just like Cosmi, all of that. And so, I mean, if you're going to have to pay a player over $20 million a year to play guard, I think they're going to ultimately get priced out. Now, we had to completely look at this. PFF is tying them together, and people start talking about it, and the 49ers have need at interior offensive line. But I can't see the 49ers paying a guard, which they've never done, almost a $20 million. I just can't see it. So even though I like the player, I don't think it makes sense for the 49ers to pay him to do that. So we don't know what Zeitler's money is going to be. We know Trey Smith's going to be, priced out. I think that looking at the numbers for Jenkins, I think he's going to be priced out. Zeitler could, in fact, be priced out as well, because I don't think the 49ers want to spend over $10 million for an offensive guard. They want to be able to upgrade over Aaron Banks without breaking the bank. And I think they would love to pay somebody around $8 to $9 million if they were going to bring in a free agent to play along the offensive line. So that's something that's going to be really, really tough, is the 49ers finding a guard where they could go. Another name, and he's a similar build, is Will Fry, 6'6", 305, had a 86.9 overall grade for the Indianapolis Colts, fourth best in the league. Pass blocking grade 74.9, run blocking grade 84.9. crazy good. I think he's going to get priced out. You know what I mean? I think these guys are just too good with the explosion in the market for offensive guards. I think that could be a real problem for the 49ers when looking at guard. You look at center, there's a couple of guys, like even if you're talking about Dahlman, and let's say he got $15 million a year, I think you're getting a lot more value at center for Drew Dahlman at $15 million a year than you're getting for Tevin Jenkins at guard, because his numbers, even though they were really, really good, they're not like crazy better, right, than Ben Barch. Ben Barch's numbers were pretty equivalent to Jenkins. If you look at the numbers, he was 74.8 overall, a 74 pass blocking grade, and 71.2 when it came to the run blocking grade. And you look at Tevin Jenkins, who's going to get over $20 million. He's 75.4 overall grade, 75.8 pass blocking grade, and 74.3 run blocking grade. You're talking just a little bit different. I mean, Chris Foerster's always talking about that level. Where's that level? Well, I don't think if they can feel they can get Ben Barch back for a lot cheaper rate, if they feel he can play at that level, it's pretty consistent with some of these higher priced guys and what they're going to get out on the open market. So right now, I mean, just finding guys that fit the scheme and that are going to make a lot of money, you might just have better options within your own program that could be a little bit cheaper. Now, other names that are out there on the open market, I just want to bring them up, and just so you're aware of who they are. James Daniels, the guard from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mekhi Becton from the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think Mekhi Becton, even though he played in the system with the Jets, would be somebody the 49ers would be interested in. His pass blocking grade is still not that great. So I just don't think that he was an option. Guards like Brandon Scherf will be a lot cheaper. A guy like Zach Martin, he's going to be 34 years old. So another guy that's older. He's been dealing with a lot of injuries. If you knew what you were going to get out of Zach Martin, you would potentially think about it. And so you talk about pass blocking grade. Let's compare him and the other 34-year-old Kevin Zeitler. His pass blocking grade this year is Zach Martin 70.4, Zeitler 73.0. True pass set. That means, no movement in the pocket. They're just dropping straight back. They were almost identical. 67.4 for Martin, 67.8 for Zeitler. And then their positive run blocking grade percentage, Zach Martin 9.5, Kevin Zeitler 12.0. So if you're talking about older guys, it could be that Zeitler takes the market of the older guys and then Zach Martin's available for cheaper. It seems like the 49ers, definitely have some opportunities to upgrade in free agency if they want. The one thing I will say, if you look at some of the numbers for the positive run blocking grade percentage, Aaron Banks at a 15.2 compared to the other guys that we just talked about, Zeitler and Zach Martin being just at around 10%. So Aaron Banks definitely has some things that are really good for this football team. But ultimately, I don't think the 49ers are going to pay a lot of money for an interior offensive lineman when they have potential possibilities in the room. And I think it starts with Ben Barch. And if you could pay Ben Barch, half of the salary, let's say, of a guy like Aaron Banks, that's a huge savings, but it might even be less. Could you give him, $2.8, $3.5 million to be your starting left guard? You definitely could. And, it's like I said, it's not like you have to hang everything on that. You could bring back Feliciano to compete. He's been playing for a really cheap contract, especially coming off an injury. You could do that, make it a very low risk type thing. You still have Spencer Burford in house, who hasn't proven that he could do it, but you've still got him in house. You got Nick Zakel. Now, I do believe Nick Zakel needs to be competing with Jake Brendel. Whether the 49ers are whether they're competing for the starting center job or they're competing for the backup center job behind somebody the 49ers got, I think that absolutely needs to happen. And let's see what happens with offensive tackle in the draft. If the 49ers address offensive tackle, maybe that frees up Jaylen Moore. You might want your rookie getting all the left tackle snaps when you're at training camp, or at least a lot of them. We know Trent takes days off. Maybe you want him getting a lot of those reps. Well, that might free up Jaylen Moore, who's been taking all those reps for the last 3 seasons, to go ahead and slide into guard, which Chris Foerster said he wished he had the opportunity to do because he deserves it. Now, a couple of things for the offense when it comes to the draft. because I want to touch on this a little bit. The 49ers absolutely could go guard in the draft. And just a few names to mention. Tyler Booker, the offensive guard from Alabama, I fully expect him to go somewhere between the mid to late first round as of right now. We'll see what happens when we get through Senior Bowl and Combine and all these guys really start getting slotted in. You got Wyatt Millum from West Virginia. He just measured out today at the Senior Bowl, 6'6", 315 pounds. He has 10-inch hands and a basically a 33-inch arm length. So very Colt McKivitz-esque. West Virginia, size, everything Colt McKivitz-esque. So he might make sense if you're drafting him to play on the interior. A guy that I absolutely love, I'm going to do a breakdown on Patreon of him this week, is Donovan Jackson. Some people will see him as a tackle because he filled in there. I see him as a guard. I think he's a plug-and-play starter at left guard. So if you're looking for somebody to step in, you don't want to pay money at guard, I think someone like Donovan Jackson could do it. A few names just to look at. And then Tate Rutledge as well from Georgia. Those guys all could be available early on in the first 2 rounds or so, and could be potential for the 49ers at guard if they don't decide to go guard with free agency. So I will say this. I think the 49ers' best opportunities for guard are in-house. I don't think, like PFF said, that they're going to pay Tevin Jenkins $20 million per year or more than. I just don't think that's where they spend. They spend at left tackle, they spend at center, and then they spend at right tackle. Those have been the positions they've been willing to spend. I don't think they're going to spend. So here's the free agent guards. Let me know if you would pay one of these guys to come in. You think it's a bigger priority? I'm definitely interested in listing that. And if I missed one of the guys you think would be a huge option, I'm also curious what you have to say about that. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, it's 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.